And talking about the 10th edition of Jib Talks, let me take you back to the very first one. So 10 years ago, plus 1 day. Everything is ready for the very first Jib Talks. We've got it all set up. We've got it all prepared. I'm at a kids' party, and I get a phone call. The office of the Chief Minister. Aho. The Chief Minister is off sick. He's got a bad virus. He won't be able to talk at the event tomorrow. Luckily, Minister Cortés stepped in and improvised almost his way and replaced him favorably. But luckily, our next speaker did come the following year and speak at our event in 2016. But think about how much has happened since then. Brexit, COVID, changes of government in the UK and in Spain, a number of elections, local elections between then and now, the OS 35, all these things he had to deal with, and of course, most recently, the closure of mother care. Here to tell us about those years, please welcome on stage the Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo.
Thank you. The best thing that can happen when you are going to address a large audience is that you can't see them. You can imagine why I've titled my talk today at Jib Talks with reference to Dante's Inferno. Julian's just given you an outline of the last 10 years. But you might ask yourselves why I also made a reference to Gabriel Garcia Marquez's particularly poignant and emotional Love in a Time of Cholera. Because Florentino, in that particularly seminal piece of literature, tells us that love is a disease, just like cholera. Well, in my view, what's become abundantly clear in the past years since Brexit is that Brexit is also a disease, just like COVID was a disease. But you know that these past 10 years since the first Jib Talks, like Julian has said, have been dramatic, they've been difficult. But just to put everything in this context, in this room today, in the place where we elect our governments, today is exactly 5 years since we left the European Union. Exactly 5 years. So let me take you through that tumultuous decade. Let me tell you why it's been so hellish. And let me try and do that really quickly, not even in the 30 minutes and 18 seconds I have left. And let me start where Juan Franco just finished. Because exactly 10 years ago, I was the father of one child. His name was Sebastian. And I was expecting my second son. He was to become Oliver. And in May, a man called Franco had been elected mayor of La Linea, and nobody had seen him coming, not even me. It's a hell of a way to start 10 years. Franco has just taken over in La Linea. The same year that we'd opened the Gibraltar International Bank, the same year we'd established the Gibraltar University. That year there was to be an election. We won a landslide in that year. Everything looked good. Juan Franco was unrelated to El Caudillo. Things were looking up. But David Cameron said that if he won the election and he couldn't get a good deal out of the European Union, he'd call a referendum on whether the United Kingdom should stay in or leave the European Union. 2016 was a completely different year. Things weren't looking up. First of all, in February, Cameron says the deal ain't good enough and talks now about a referendum in that year. My mother started to have dementia. David Cameron resigned that year. Theresa May became Prime Minister. The United Kingdom had voted to leave the European Union, what we considered was the buffer on sovereignty with Spain that kept the frontier open. In 2017, Mrs. May gives the Article 50 notice to leave the European Union. Good things happened too. Valentina was born. In 2018, we immediately begin the negotiation of the withdrawal agreement, and my mother dies. In 2019, in Parliament, the withdrawal agreement that we'd negotiated over 24 months is voted down. Mrs. May is no longer Prime Minister. Boris Johnson holds the keys as the First Lord of the Treasury, not the most serious politician you've ever come across. And when you think that because he's Prime Minister, you're going to get the withdrawal agreement over the line, and Brexit is not going to be the last thing that you talk about every night and the first thing that you talk about every morning, it happens, but for the wrong reason, because in 2020, COVID hits us like nothing had ever hit us before. And in that context, we end the implementation of the first phase of the negotiation of the withdrawal agreement, and we have to start looking at how Gibraltar is going to fit into that going forward. And we negotiate with masks on video, the New Year's Eve agreement. It wasn't an easy year despite all that. Remember that we were wearing masks, we couldn't have meetings, and in May of that year, the principal law officer of Gibraltar, the commissioner of police, came into my office and lied to my face. Not an easy year. Not an easy year. In 2021, the United Kingdom secured for itself an agreement with the European Union going forward, the TCA. Dominic Raab came to Gibraltar and we agreed the negotiating mandate to take the New Year's Eve agreement into a full agreement on Gibraltar's future relationship with the EU. It took the EU until October to do the same thing. That month, we start negotiations. Things are looking up. In 2022, Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine. Liz Truss becomes Prime Minister. The Queen dies, and Kwasi Kwarteng delivers the mini-budget. In less than 6 months, the cost of living will skyrocket by over 10%, with all of the consequences that that can have. Things are bleak. They're looking tough, but Rishi Sunak becomes Prime Minister. We have 3 UK Prime Ministers in 1 year, and the negotiation is continuing. Things are looking up. In 2023, my personal life gets turned on its head, literally as the year opens. And I cannot describe to you the utter hell that I go through between January and April. But in May, Anna reaches out to me, and a new angel appears in my world. The negotiations continue. We don't do a deal. We have the first opportunity to seal a deal, but there is no deal. We are that close. And there has to be an election. And in 2023, the principal parties fighting the Gibraltar general election fight themselves into as close to a political stalemate as this community has ever been. But we win. And the negotiations continue. In 2024, Keir Starmer becomes Prime Minister. I am accused of not respecting the rule of law in an inquiry which has been called in to determine why a commissioner retires early, but quickly morphs in that year into an inquiry into corruption in Gibraltar. Rumors start to circulate that, I'm sorry I have to read this, but I sometimes forget. I own a Ferrari, I'm worth £60 million, and I own a huge villa in Portugal. However, no one gives me the keys to the car, the address of the villa, or the name of the bank where the money is held. And the negotiations continue. It's 2025. Only 1 month has passed. It's almost exactly 5 years since masks were first worn in Wuhan in China. And the negotiations continue. You can imagine that it was not difficult for me to want to compare Brexit and COVID. Both have been just as bad. And we've gone from a situation where people might have been overheard often in town saying, es que el beep de Picardo nos va a vender, to a situation where I'm now hearing more and more often, a ver si el beep de Picardo nos vende ya, de una vez. But look, the key thing that I want to leave you with, in this stage which has seen so much of all of that play out, is this idea that Churchill was in a tougher place than I have ever been, or any of you, or any of us will ever be. And with Europe in flames, taken over by fascism, he said, when you're in hell, keep marching. It's the only way out. That quote has been hugely important for me in the past 5 years. But I learned something else about hell. I learned that when you're deep in the flames of hell, when the fire is licking your heels, when the molten rock is going to melt you like it too is melting, the angels appear. You're never marching on your own. That's the reality, and that's the strength. That's what gives you the steel to always carry on. Not because you can do it alone, but because you are never alone. There are always people around you ready to help. This is about more than just teamwork in an office or more than just teamwork in a government. It's about teamwork in life. So, I've got many angels in my life. Joseph, Michael, Richard, Albert, Javier, the team in my office, especially Denise and Peter, my close protection officers, my closest friend, Nick, and of course, my children, and Anna. All of these are the angels that have made everything bearable. The angels that have lifted me above the flames. It's true that heroes don't always wear capes and they don't always have a tissue when they need one. But it's also particularly true, and this is the more important point, that angels don't always have wings. Dante's Inferno is the first of 3 poems that he wrote. The second one was Purgatorio, and the third was Paraíso. They're not to be read, in my view, consecutively. They are to be read as existing concurrently. Because in every day of these 10 years that I have described to you, as quickly as I have been able to, there has been a moment of hell, there has been a moment of purgatory, and there has been a moment of paradise too. That's my lesson of the last 10 years. There is always something to look forward to in every day. And there is always the steel inside of us to get us through. We all have the strength to carry on. Not because any of us might be a hero, but because we are all surrounded by angels. Each of the people in our lives, the people who love us. If there's one thing that I've done in politics which is different to other people, is that in every major speech I've given, I've talked about love. It matters more than everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Minister